everyone, this is Daniel Scranton, and this bonus video is going to be about Kalyandra shaking the laptop stand and wagging her tail in front of the camera. No, it's going to be about the fifth dimension and what it is exactly. So you keep hearing about the shift, Ascension, the event, and so on. You hear about 3 days of darkness, you hear about a solar sneeze, and you also may have heard stories, you can see it really well on that, stories where people will talk about two separate Earths, an Earth for people who are going to remain in third dimension, which by the way we are no longer in, and an Earth for the fifth dimensional people. So you'll even hear stories of people talking about alien spaceships coming and taking those of us away who are awake or who are more service to others oriented or something, and taking us to this fifth dimensional Earth. So I would like to give you my take on all of this. First of all, I disagree with some pretty heavy hitters out there like Bashar on this. And that's okay. I love Bashar. I think Bashar is great. And if you like me because I channel the Arcturians and you don't agree with what I'm saying, that's fine too. I think it's probably best that we don't all agree on things, because it makes for spirited discussion on these topics and maybe leads people down roads they wouldn't have otherwise traversed down. So I've heard Bashar and I heard this other guy the other night talk about dimensions in terms of that we have dimensions of space. So in case you don't know what those are, height, width, and length. You have a cube, and it has a width, a height, and I guess length. I don't know which one. I don't know if this is length and this is width. I don't know. But those are the three dimensions, right, that people talk about. And we live in a three-dimensional world because, you know, my hand has a front, a back, sides, and that makes it three-dimensional. And then you hear people say, well, the fourth dimension is time. So we've always had four dimensions. And that's where I think you lose me, personally. You lost me at thinking that the first three dimensions were height, width, and length, because when we talk about dimensions in the spiritual realm, we're talking about levels of consciousness. So the first dimension is the rock mineral dimension. So you can be a rock. Your consciousness can be in a rock, and you can have an experience as a rock, and that would be a first dimensional experience. And what I realized today as I was thinking about this video is that the rock doesn't really grow. So the rock stays a rock. And that is a very one-dimensional or first-dimensional kind of experience. And then we have in the second dimension, we have the plants, the plant kingdom, trees. And they grow, and in case you didn't already know this, they do have a consciousness that is measurable. There was a guy who was not trying to prove that plants had consciousness, so he had no agenda. Here he was a polygraph guy, and he hooked up his polygraph machine to plants and even lettuce that was in a salad that you get on an airplane. So not a lot of life left in that iceberg lettuce, but it still would register on the polygraph when he would think certain thoughts. So if he would think a thought about pruning a plant, and that plant was hooked up to the polygraph machine, the lie detector test is what it's called colloquially, it would register. He couldn't fake it out. He couldn't think it and not mean it. Had to actually mean it. And the plant had a response. So there's a dimension of consciousness for the plant realm. And then third dimensionally, we are expressing as humans and animals and E.T.s, and that's a level of consciousness. So we procreate, we make art, I'm sure plants do have the ability to love, but there's a difference between the level of consciousness that we attain in these bodies. We move around a lot more. So what I was thinking about earlier today is the rock doesn't move at all. The plant and tree, they move, but flower, they move very slowly. And then we have humans, animals, we can move pretty fast. Not that that's any sort of determining factor in one's consciousness, but it's just interesting as you move up in your level of consciousness. So to me, the fifth dimension has never been a place. It's always been a level of consciousness that allows us to exist in a higher frequency range. So, and here's a point that came to me in the shower last night, which is where a lot of good ideas come, if you pay attention, that I wanted to make about this whole idea that somehow the fifth dimension is building on that idea of height, width, length, and time, and then the fifth dimension being some other attribute of space-time or quality of space-time. If that's true, then what about the non-physical dimensions? And a non-physical dimension cannot, by definition, have height, width, and length in it, since there's no physicality. There's be nothing. There's just consciousness. There's no place, and so there's no time. And so anyway, I think that sort of dispels that idea that the dimensions are, they're not, and sometimes in sci-fi, you'll see, they're in this dimension, so this dimension is like a different place. No, that different place is a different version of our time-space reality, which you could call a parallel universe. You could call it, I think there's a difference between, which this video is not about, but I think there's a difference between a parallel universe and a different timeline. I think it's easier to jump timelines than universes. So anyway, I don't think that's what we mean by dimension either. And here's my really, really good example of what we mean by dimension, okay? When you're watching a movie or a television show and you see, hey, don't do that, and you see a character on the screen, and let's say that character, you would say, is very one-dimensional, meaning that character doesn't evolve throughout the course of the show or the movie. That character is always the tough guy who doesn't say anything or doesn't say much, just beats people up or whatever he is or she is. One-dimensional character. They're not that interesting. Now, a long time ago, I watched all the reruns and I caught up and then started watching the new ones of the show NYPD Blue. So NYPD Blue had one character who was in every episode of the series, and his name was Andy Sipowicz. He was a detective, in I forget what precinct in New York. And his character, you would think, would be a pretty one-dimensional character. He's tough, he's a New Yorker, he's a cop. But then every once in a while, Andy Sipowicz would surprise you and show a different side to himself. And one of the things that I loved about that character is that he had more dimensions to him. He was not a one-note character. And in good writing, I used to write myself screenplays, good television, good art, good novels, I'm sure, too. I don't really read novels, but the characters are more than just one-dimensional. They're multi-dimensional. They show that they have depth. They can be, a lot of people will say, well, what a woman wants in a man is they want the man to be really sweet and kind to them. But then if a burglar or a mugger were to come up to the two of you on the street, they'd want the man to defend them. So to have, I don't mean to be like sexist in this example, so please forgive me for using that example if you're going to get offended. But that's just what came to me in the moment. So then the partner, in this case, the romantic partner, could be the man, could be the woman, has more than one dimension to them. They have the ability to step up when the time is right for that, but they're not a violent person all the time. You don't want to be in a relationship with someone who's violent all the time. But to have that, to be able to draw from that and protect someone that you love, that might be a dimension to your personality or character that you would want at certain times. So, the fifth dimension, what does it mean? Well, as I was saying before, we're all vibrating, right? We're all vibrating at a particular frequency. And that frequency makes us this reality that most of us agree upon is happening right now in the way that it's happening. So because we have this range of vibration that we're all in the fourth dimension, we can have an agreed upon reality, but there are certain limitations to that reality. And a good example of that is we don't hear the whistle that the dog hears. There's such thing as a dog whistle. And dogs, that's because dogs' hearing goes to a higher range than human ears and all the stuff inside the ears are capable of. So when we raise our vibration, when we go from operating here, like at the very height of the fourth dimensional frequency range that we're in, when we jump up to a fifth dimensional frequency range, so now we don't ever go below this point in vibration, but we can vibrate way up here. Then we have a totally new experience of self, others, and the world. And this world that we exist on right now, the Earth, is ascending with us. She's coming for the ride. Okay? So we don't have to go to a new Earth. Now, if you hear an expression, the new Earth, that's sort of shortened version of what it really is. It's the new experience of Earth that we have wanted to have for quite some time. Some of us now, the shift, ascension, the event, whatever you call it, people have been talking about this for centuries. This is not new. But there have been some people, some prominent people recently who have gotten a lot of attention. I know Corey Good's interviews on Gaia very well. I think I watched all of them. Pretty sure I watched all of them. And he would talk about the solar sneeze leading to the 3 days of darkness. No electronics work in that time, and even the sun is dark because of a solar sneeze event that would lead to all of us eventually shifting our consciousness. Okay, so that's one story. Then you have Allison Coe, COE, who is a QHHT practitioner, who had all these experiences where her clients kept talking about an event, and the event was like a cosmic wave of love that swept over us and all of Earth and transformed everyone into these higher dimensional, higher vibrational beings, right? So then everybody else starts jumping in, kind of like when The Secret came out and then everyone was writing books and doing seminars on law of attraction, right? So after these two people, who I still believe Corey Good is a sincere person. I've not had any reason to doubt him. And Allison Coe seems like a lovely person from what I've seen on YouTube. So I'm not doubting any of the stories that they're telling or getting. But really, so that's that's what could happen potentially to sort of put us over the hump and get us into that fifth dimensional frequency range. And in the fifth dimension, from my work that I've channeled and from others, what I know of it is that it basically means more expansive, knowing yourself more as a collective, as your higher self. Your higher self is like a collective of all of yourselves that you've ever been. You operate with a physical body, but it's a lighter, less dense version. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole density question here because that's too much, and I'm not an expert. But this body right here is pretty dense. For me, for a neutrino, passes right through. But for me, it's dense. That's how I experience it. When we ascend and we all have light bodies, we'll experience our bodies more like, let's say, a more liquidy type of matter where it's easy to transform. Less limitations, meaning telepathy, teleportation, telekinesis, time travel, and like I said, shape-shifting, bilocating, all that stuff in the galactic community. You know, we'll be in the galactic community by then, so space travel, contact with E.T.s, all that stuff, ability to access portals. This is what instant manifestation, this is what I know life in the fifth dimension, which again is not a place, would be like. It's a if you think about love, is not a place you go to, but it's a state of being that you're in. And when you're in that state of being, doesn't the world seem different? Like when you fall in love, don't you hear the birds sing a little bit more? Don't you have a little bit more of a spring in your step? And doesn't everything look more beautiful, and you fall in love with nature, with animals, with trees, because you're in love. You're in that state where everything's beautiful. Well, most of us don't stay in that state all the time. We do when we fall into romantic love, but to hold a high vibration like that of love for ever, all the time, is to be experiencing the world in a different way, in a higher vibrational way. And yes, the world will respond to you then, because you're putting out that high vibration, and so things are coming back to you to reflect to you the love that you are and that you're being. And so that's what a fifth dimensional experience is to me. That's my definition of it. And I think that being awake spiritually means being aware of what you're vibrating. That's a big part of it. Knowing that you do have source within you, which means you have access to all vibrations, not just the good ones, but all of them are in there, and you're choosing. You're awake, you're aware, you're conscious. So you're choosing the good ones, choosing to operate at the higher frequency states of being because you like the way they feel. So you're more inclined to go by how you're feeling inside and use that as your barometer for whether to do something, whether to connect with that person, whether to go to that place. So that's where I think we all can be leaders in this movement towards getting into that fifth dimensional state of being and help others to recognize that even if they have a lower vibration that they're experiencing, that they can move through it, move past it, and move into a higher vibrational state and choose that higher vibrational state rather than just waiting around and waiting for something to happen to put them in the higher vibrational state. So I think that as we do this more consciously, we make more of our decisions consciously, we bring ourselves into that fifth dimensional higher self state. And we don't have to then just scour YouTube or the internet for the latest predictions on when the event is going to happen, because I do think that the Arcturians talk about it all the time. We get cosmic support. They talked about it tonight. They deliver. We ask, they deliver. We get the boost, we get the support, we get all the help. But we also have to be in the vibrational range of receiving it. And so that's what tonight's message was about. And, in case you're wondering about the fourth dimension. Okay. So, if you are over 7 years old and watching this video, if you were born before December 21st, 2012, then you were born into the third dimensional frequency range. And the end of the Mayan calendar signaled the end of that frequency range that we would exist in. So December 21st, 2012 was the date that we ascended from the third to the fourth. It was a little jump. It was just a little bit of a leap forward. But enough for us to be able to say, hey, no more contracts, no more, any karma that we accrued from previous lifetimes, it was worked off by then. Any karma you experience now would be karma created from that date forward. It's getting closer and closer to instant karma, to instant manifestation, right? And in the fourth dimension, we are practicing becoming more fifth dimensional. So we can exist in that fifth dimensional, higher vibrational, higher self state here in the fourth, but we're not going to stay there. We're always going to come back. And we can be very, very low in the fourth dimension. We can operate from that kind of third dimensional paradigm mindset. We all know we can all be very reactive, very very egoic, very much like us versus them, victim perpetrator, and we have the choice. So in the fourth dimension, you have the choice what you want to exist in. You can hang out in the upper echelon of the fourth and just kind of like ease your way into the fifth with the rest of humanity. Or you can hang out in the lower rungs and be a bit more third dimensional in your orientation. And who's going to shift and who isn't, I don't know. That's kind of up to everybody's higher self. And what serves the soul the most. But I don't think there's going to be a giant, reckoning, rapture, culling experience that you would read about in the book of Revelations, which, by the way, is based on one guy's dream. I mean, come on. How much validity are we going to give to one person's dream in terms of what's going to happen thousands of years later? Don't those predictive dreams kind of happen within a couple of days usually? So no, it doesn't have to be biblical. And it doesn't have to involve aliens choosing, like mini Jesuses choosing. Yeah, you get on the spaceship. No, you're not good enough. I think it's going to be a group event. I think we're going to help each other through it, and I think that's what we're doing right now. So I know that's what Kalyandra does for me. Soothes the savage beast inside of me. Okay, everyone. Thank you for watching. 50% off sale on danielscranton.com right now. Just added a new meditation and light language today. Private sessions, channeling lessons, all that stuff is good for the discount code LOVE on there. So please check that out, as well as the other links I'm going to put down in the description for my Making Contact with E.T.s course and whatever else I'm putting down there. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your weekend, and bye for now. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment on this video.